Ever wondered what the typical gentleman's EDC looked like 100 years ago? We'll walk you through it. While the concept of an EDC, or everyday carry, has only developed a named and distinct subculture as of the 2010s or so, men have obviously carried objects important to them on a daily basis since, well, probably since the invention of pockets. Which, by the way, we've actually covered in an article on our website, so put that one in your pocket to read once this video's over. Given the continued popularity of the EDC as a concept, we're jumping back in time by a century to the dawn of the golden age of menswear in the 1920s to cover 10 items, or collections of items, a typical gentleman might keep on his person. Now it's time we get started with our first item for today. Number 1, the wristwatch or pocket watch. Long before cell phones, men on the go still needed a quick and easy way to tell time. The pocket watch, usually stored in a wearer's waistcoat or trouser pocket and connected by a chain, was still the default choice in the 20s. But the wristwatch, an evolution of the trench watch pioneered in the Great War of the previous decade, was fast gaining ground, especially among returning servicemen. The watches themselves, regardless of style, were chiefly made from metal components, along with glass crystals, and more luxurious models would incorporate precious metals like silver or gold. Wristwatch straps were most commonly leather at the time, as this is what had been used with trench watches, though expensive models would come to incorporate metal bands. Pocket watch chains were generally made from metal, with decorative fobs sometimes incorporating ribbons or even precious gems, but a now largely forgotten accessory, sometimes called an Albert strap by Brits, connected a pocket watch to the wearer's jacket lapel via a small leather strap. Watches are still worn by dedicated enthusiasts and traditionalists today, of course, though they're less common than a century ago. Also less common today, and potentially for the better, is our next collection of items, number 2, smoking implements, including cigarette or cigar cases, lighters or matches, and so on. Smoking was so ubiquitous in the 1920s that it was almost universal. While factory-made cigarettes could be carried in the packs they came in, elegant gentlemen would often transfer them, or put cigarettes they hand-rolled themselves, in slim metal cases, usually kept in a jacket pocket for quick access. As with watches, expensive cases would incorporate precious metals and could often feature detailed engraving or monogramming. Cigars could also be carried in cases, though smokers who wished for better smoking conditions would sooner opt to leave the house with just 1 or 2 cigars and keep the rest in a humidor or cigar box at home or the office. And of course, one can't actually smoke without a way to light up, so a book or box of matches was carried by many a man, with lighters gaining in popularity as well. The development of ferrocerium, basically synthetic flint, in 1903 led to early portable lighters in the 1910s, and by the 20s, push-button models were becoming popular. The famous Zippo with its windproof flame, however, wouldn't come along until 1932. Meanwhile, though pipes were losing ground by this time to cigarettes and cigars, they were still very much around. They did require a larger list of accoutrements, though, including the pipe itself, a pouch of tobacco, a tamper, and a method of lighting. And there were smokeless tobacco options too, like tins or plugs of snuff or chewing tobacco. All this to say, the world of the 1920s was awash in tobacco, so some combination of these items was a component of most every man's EDC. Number 3 on the list is hair care items such as a comb or pomade. Despite hats also being near universal in the 1920s, a man would still spend much of the day with his hat off, assuming he was following proper hat etiquette, which you can learn more about here. Thus, he was still expected to keep his hair maintained, and a lustrous, slicked-back style accomplished with pomade was the order of the day. A pocket comb, sometimes foldable and generally made from either horn, if luxurious, or from celluloid, a forerunner to modern plastic, was the easiest way to keep one's hair looking tidy, and some men might go the extra mile of carrying a tin of pomade with them. While I don't carry pomade with me, and in fact I use it less often in my hair at present than I have in years past. A plastic pocket comb is still a component of my personal EDC, as I covered in this video. But as long as we're somewhat on the subject, let's cover my outfit for today. In today's video, I'm wearing a smart casual ensemble centered around tones of brown, green, and blue. The central element is my vintage tweed jacket in Harris tweed from the now defunct British brand Hodges. It features a barleycorn weave and an array of brown, tan, green, and black tones, as well as brown football buttons. I'm wearing it over a solid light blue OCBD shirt from Charles Tyrwhitt that features, of course, a button-down collar as well as button cuffs. My trousers are plain medium brown to ground the outfit somewhat, and my shoes are suede derbies in a tan color featuring relatively thick crepe soles. These are also from a British brand, Herring Shoes. It's the model called the Cobra. My wool chalet tie is a vintage model from Robert Talbot in green tones featuring a Macclesfield Neats diamond pattern. The pocket square I'm wearing is also vintage. This one is silk, featuring a wide variety of colors like light blue, dark green, red, orange, and brown. Rounding things out today are my two-toned shadow-striped socks from Fort Belvedere in navy blue and tan, and the fragrance I'm wearing from the Roberto Ugolini collection. This one is Derby. It seemed appropriate given the Derby shoes I'm wearing, and it's also one of my favorite scents from the Ugolini collection. So, for the socks and fragrance I'm wearing in today's video, as well as a wide array of other classic men's accessories, corduroy trousers, and other Ugolini fragrances, you can take a look at the Fort Belvedere shop here. Another item in my personal EDC is a pocket handkerchief, which also happens to be the next item, number 4, on our list today. Firstly, in discussion here, though, remember that a handkerchief is not a pocket square. The latter is a purely decorative element, often made from materials like silk or wool, and meant to be worn in a jacket's breast pocket as a sartorial accent. But the former is a utilitarian tool, made most often from cotton, often in plain white, meant to be used for any number of mundane purposes. A man of the 1920s might use a hanky to mop his brow, clean his eyeglasses, wipe down surfaces, as cities were dirtier places back then, or chivalrously offer it to a woman in need, at which time a monogram on the fabric would serve as an elegant reminder of the doer of the good deed. While handkerchiefs aren't exactly as necessary for many men today as they were a century ago, I still find it sensible to have one at hand. Next is number 5, a wallet or coin purse. This is an item that a man of 1925 would have in common with one of 2025, though not for exactly the same reasons. In our increasingly cashless modern society, wallets are used primarily to carry an ID like a driver's license and a collection of credit, debit, insurance, and/or membership cards. But a century ago, carrying an identity document, or at least a government-issued one as opposed to something like a business or calling card, was fairly uncommon, given that widespread automobile usage was just beginning and electronically readable cards were decades away. Meanwhile, business and calling cards were often kept in a separate, dedicated case, and the wallet or coin purse was primarily used for cash, whether bills or coins. Keep in mind that $1 in 1925 had the same buying power as over $18 at the time of this video's creation. Typical wallets of the 1920s were made from leather, often with folding panels and perhaps a snap button or two, though some wallets were metal cases with high-end models featuring precious metals like silver or gold. For more information, we've produced a number of guides on wallets as well as business card cases, and of course, we offer both in our Fort Belvedere shop. Speaking of which, at the time of this video's creation, we've recently added to our lineup of wallets and passport holders with new two-toned models, so be sure to take a look. Along the same lines of similar but different in the EDC of the 1920s and 2020s is the wallet's natural companion in the mental checklist, number 6, keys, whether for doors or cars. Most commonly carried here would be keys for doors, like house keys, office keys, and so on. As we mentioned previously, automobile ownership wasn't quite as widespread just yet, and car keys were a bit different at the time. A car might simply lock from the door itself, and anyone could turn on the ignition. And these locks, using tumblers, were easier to pick, making Grand Theft Auto not too difficult. Things like trunks and glove compartments often had their own keys as well. Whichever keys a man might be carrying, they were often kept on a key ring and attached to a fob or chain, and thus could be worn in a similar fashion to pocket watches. Now let's round out our list with a handful of items that are, frankly, quickly explained. Number 7 is a bottle opener. While most beverages sold today come in tab-open cans or bottles with twist-off caps, many drinks of the 1920s came in glass bottles with pressurized caps. As such, a man might think to keep a simple bottle opener on his keyring or fob. Number 8 is a pocket knife. Another item whose versatility practically speaks for itself, and which is still carried by many men today, though perhaps not quite as many as a century ago. Pocket knives could be used for opening mail or packages, shaving plug tobacco, cleaning one's nails, as a screwdriver in a pinch, the list goes on. Number 9 is a fountain pen. Prior to the development of cheap and disposable pens, which you can learn more about in this guide, a gentleman was more likely to carry around a quality writing implement, often a fountain pen, in the days when handwriting correspondence, financial or transactional documents, and other items was more common. We've produced plenty of videos on fountain pens, and they are, in a sense, the entire reason for being of the Gentleman's Gazette, so check them out if you're curious to learn more. The final item on our list proper is number 10, a walking stick. In truth, walking sticks as a fashion accessory, as opposed to a medical cane, were already largely on their way out by the 1920s, and were more of a holdover from the Victorian era. Still, some dandies and upper-class gentlemen continued to carry them as a further accent to their ensembles, and they could be used for self-defense, especially if a man was trained in the martial art of bartitsu. If you're wondering why walking sticks were dying out around this time, though, you can consult our dedicated video on the subject. Before we go, we mentioned a few times that cars weren't as universal in the 1920s as they are today. But for the men who did own a car, their EDC likely included a couple more items. So we've got some bonuses for the gentleman motorist here, those being driving gloves and goggles. With cabin heating in automobiles almost non-existent at this time, it wasn't uncommon for a driver's hands to get cold. As such, driving gloves provided comfort as well as better grip on the steering wheel. Some men might carry them on their person, but they were also commonly stored, where else, in the car's glove compartment. For the gentleman who wishes to capture some of this spirit today, we offer driving gloves in our shop, though they're decidedly less bulky than those of the 1920s. Also, as many automobiles of this era were open-topped and windshields were sometimes smaller, wind and dust needed to be considered. Driving goggles, therefore, were a common solution for keeping a motorist's eyes hydrated, focused, and free of debris. In conclusion, you can see how some of the typical EDC items for a gentleman of the 1920s have commonalities with those of today, and some are quite a bit different. Are there items you think belong on this list that we neglected to include, or some that you don't think were as widespread as we suggested? We considered listing the hip flask, for instance, but decided against it, given that, at least in the US, prohibition was in effect in the 20s, and likely not every man was flouting that law. Also, would you like to see us extend this concept through the decades as a sort of companion series to what men really wore? Let us know in the comments below, and perhaps this idea will carry on.